Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, a wonderful day to talk about all the beautiful poetry that exists in the world. Sometimes I talk about a strange poem, although for the month of September, I have set about eulogizing my father, and not just up until the end of September, up until my dad's, what would have been my dad's 58th birthday on October 6th. So these next poems over the course of this next month will primarily be about my dad. So for good, for bad, whatever poems particularly speaks to me is a poem that I will talk about. And so today I wanted to revisit one of the Confessionalists and talk about a poem about a complicated relationship. I am referring to All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton. For those who don't know, Anne Sexton was a poet. She primarily became interested and focused on writing and whatnot in around the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, as she had given birth and went through some pretty harsh postpartum depression. And as a result, she was institutionalized. And while she was getting treatment, they encouraged her to start writing, and that's what she did. And she soon came into contact with the other Confessionalists, especially Sylvia Plath, and they became friends or developed writing relationships. And if you know me and if you've been paying attention to Poetry Thursday on this channel, you know that I'm very much into the Confessionalist. I think it's my favorite school of poetry just because of the sort of honesty and the kind of ugly look we get at someone's reality at times. And they also touched upon, sexism, racism, and inequalities and injustices in society while they were writing. And so that's what particularly drew me to their work. So unfortunately, much like with some of the other Confessionalists, Anne Sexton killed herself because of her depression later on, which is rather unfortunate. But fortunately, Anne Sexton's work lives on. So without further ado, let's talk about All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton. I will read the poem and do a brief analysis, and we will move on from there. All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton. Father, this year's jinx rides us apart, where you followed our mother to her cold slumber. A second shock boiling its stone to your heart. Leave me here to shuffle and disencumber you from your residence you could not afford. A gold key, your half of a woolen mill, 20 suits from Dunn's, an English Ford, the love and legal verbiage of another's will. Boxes of pictures of people I do not know. I touch their cardboard faces. They must go. But the eyes, as thick as wood in this album, hold me. I stop here, where a small boy waits in a ruffled dress for someone to come for this soldier who holds his bugle like a toy, or for this velvet lady who cannot smile. Is this your father's father? This commodore in a mailman suit? My father. Time, meanwhile, has made it unimportant who you are looking for. I'll never know what these faces are all about. I lock them into their book and throw them out. This is the yellow scrapbook that you began the year I was born, as crackling now and wrinkly as tobacco leaves, clippings where Hoover outran the Democrats, wiggling his dry finger at me and Prohibition, news where the Hindenburg went down, and recent years where you went flush on war. This year, solvent but sick, you meant to marry that pretty widow in a 1-month rush, but before you had the second chance, I cried on your fat shoulder. 3 days later, you died. These are the snapshots of marriage, stopped in places, side by side at the rail toward Nassau now, here with the winner's cup at the speedboat races, here in tales of the cotillion you take a bow, Here by our kennel of dogs with their pink eyes, running like showbred pigs in their chain-link pen, here at the horse show where my sister wins a prize, and here standing like a duke among groups of men. Now I fold you down, my drunkard, my navigator, my first lost keeper, to love or look at later. I hold a 5-year diary that my mother kept for 3 years, telling all she does not to say of your alcoholic tendency. You overslept, she writes. My God, Father, each Christmas day with your blood, will I drink down your glass of wine? The diary of your hurly-burly years goes to my shelf to wait for my age to pass. Only in this hoarded span will love persevere. Whether you are pretty or not, I outlive you. Bend down my strange face to yours and forgive you. And so that pretty powerful poem was All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton. It's a poem essentially about remembering someone who has passed, being unable to really, decipher what photos mean, and ultimately arriving at the conclusion that you didn't really have the best relationship possible. But I guess in some sense you still love that person. Like the fact that you're hoarding, like at the very end of the poem, she says, only in this hoarded span will love persevere. Whether you are pretty or not, I outlive you. And it really seems like what Anne Sexton is trying to say is that, she had a complicated relationship with her father. Like, to the outside observer, it might look like because she's holding on to her father's past, like that must mean to some degree that she loves him. But, does she? All she's saying is all she's really done is outlive him. And so, to some degree, she might forgive him and want him back in her life, but the person that he was, maybe not. Another thing that I really like about this poem is when she looks at the photo album in the second verse. She says, but the eyes as thick as wood in this album hold me. I stop here where a small boy waits in a ruffled dress for someone to come. For this soldier who holds his bugle like a toy. Is this your father's father, this Commodore in a mailman suit? And the more the second verse goes on, she begins to question, like who is this person? What does it all mean? She'll never know what everything is about here. These photos, these moments are lost in time because she wasn't there, and now there's no one to really explain what they all mean. This is really personal to me, I want to say, because there's so much that, of my father that I didn't know. There's just so many photos from his past that he never explained to me. Like, he might have explained maybe a few years down the line if he had a chance at a deathbed confession or something like that. But unfortunately, my dad did not have that. He died rather suddenly. And so all those pictures that I see online of him, I'll just never really know what they meant or who those people were or what my father was feeling at that time. It's just going to be incomprehensible to me, but especially to people down the line who see those photos. In this poem, Anne Sexton says that her father followed her mom to her cold slumber. And for me, my mother is still alive, but I don't have the best relationship with her. So I can really sympathize or really understand, what Anne Sexton might be going through here. There's no one really there for her anymore. Maybe, I don't know if she had siblings or anything like that. I have siblings, so, I still have that strong connection. But that parental love that maybe she wasn't feeling in her life, I felt that parental love, but as time went on, it began to fade. So, that I can sort of sympathize with that. But yeah, that was All My Pretty Ones by Anne Sexton, a really powerful poem about loss and really coming to terms with what that loss means. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot as I consider the death of my father and what comes next and how to properly eulogize the man, because Anne Sexton really seems to love her father here, but she can't ignore the the trouble in her relationship, how distant she kind of felt from him. And I can kind of sympathize with that. So yeah, if you have something to say about this poem, this wonderful poem, comment below. Let's have a discussion about it. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that other people can find out about Poetry Thursday. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and griefy travels. Farewell.